There are certain factors that federal judges have to consider when they are sentencing an individual in a federal criminal case. The starting point of a federal criminal sentence is the federal sentencing guidelines, which is a chart that I've discussed elsewhere in my videos. And that's a very technical calculation, but that's just the starting point. What today I want to talk about is the factors that the judge has to consider after they've calculated the appropriate federal sentencing guidelines. So there is a statute that the judge has to follow that sets forth the different things that they have to consider. The two most important things, in my opinion, are the history and characteristics of the defendant, and then the nature and circumstances of the offense. The other factors that the court has to consider are restitution, a disparity in sentencing. If there's somebody else who's in the same situation with the same criminal history, there has to be some similarity in the sentencing. Otherwise, we can argue that this is an unwarranted sentencing disparity. The judge has to sentence somebody so that it reflects the seriousness of the offense and it deters future crimes by that individual and society at large, which I have a big problem with, but that's another issue for another day. But I want to focus on the two main factors, which are the history and characteristics of the defendant and the nature and circumstances of the offense. So I always say that things don't happen in a vacuum and people don't get in trouble for no reason. There's always a story behind the story. So when my clients hire me and they come to me, I ask them to write an autobiography. I want to know everything about you. I want to know everything about your life. I want to know all of the great things that you've done, all of your accomplishments, your successes. I want to know about your family. But I also want to know any sad or tragic things that you've been through. If there's been any abuse, if there was any violence, alcoholism, drug addiction in your family, any psychological issues, an accident maybe that led to drug addiction, use of pain pills, any addiction, which is very relevant, alcohol, drugs, gambling. These are all things that are relevant at sentencing. So I ask my clients to really dig deep and do a thorough history, and then I work with them on crafting a story which is used in the letter to the judge. It's given to the probation officer when they're preparing the pre-sentence report. We give it to them before the pre-sentence interview so they can incorporate it into their report. They can just cut and paste our words and put it in the report, rather than it just being the prosecutor's version of events. So when you get in front of the judge knows you, the judge knows your history, the judge knows what motivates you, and really appreciates the great things about you. If you've served in the military, if you've, whatever it is that you've done that's extraordinary, I want to really show the judge those things. I want to have certificates and letters and all kinds of documentation to show the judge if you've done community service. And then the nature and circumstances of the offense. So sometimes a crime can sound worse than it is. However, there may be circumstances that led somebody into certain actions. For instance, a drug addiction that would lead somebody into having poor judgment and then getting involved in some sort of a narcotics transaction, or a drug addiction that caused someone to become financially unstable and they felt desperate and so they engaged in some sort of fraud so that they could support their family. There are numerous reasons why people do the things that they do. So I like to explain that to the judge. I don't want to shy away from it. I don't want to say, no, we're not going to talk about the offense. Let's talk about the offense. Let's talk about why it happened, and let's really understand what your role in it is so it doesn't sound like it's worse than it is. We don't want to minimize the conduct. We don't want to excuse the conduct, but we do want to explain it. And that's very relevant and very, very important. So I always have my clients draft a statement of remorse because judges want to hear that you've learned your lesson. They want to hear that you're going to change your life, that you've already started to change your life. If you have restitution to pay, that you've been paying it, or that these are the steps you're going to take. If you have an addiction, what have you been doing about it, and what are you going to do about it going forward? So these are all factors that I really work on with my clients in preparing for sentencing. And again, there are the issues of restitution. If you can pay restitution up front, if there is restitution in your case, then that is helpful. And again, another variety of factors, but those are the two that I really wanted to focus on today, is the history and characteristics of the defendant and the nature and circumstances of the offense. So who you are as a person is in the forefront, not just a file on a judge's desk and another person marching through their court after year in and year out on the bench. So I hope that this was helpful. And if you have any further questions, if you or a loved one are facing federal criminal charges, please contact me. My contact information is in the description below. Thank you for watching.